Welcome to the audiobook Insights for Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It by Chris Voss and Tal Raz. Introduction. This is a masterclass in the art of negotiation, but not the kind you learn in a business school classroom. This is negotiation born from the crucible of crisis, developed by the FBI to save lives when the stakes are highest. To begin, we must understand a fundamental premise that challenges everything we think we know about making a deal. The old rules of rationality no longer apply. Let us transport ourselves to a lecture hall at Harvard Law School. The year is 2006. Chris Voss, the lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI, is standing in a room full of brilliant minds, students who have studied the classic theories of negotiation. They are armed with logic, reason, and the famous strategies from the seminal book, Getting to Yes. They are ready to haggle. They are ready to find a win-win. The professor, Bob Nukin, a titan in the field of conflict resolution, invites Voss to engage in a mock negotiation with a student. The scenario is simple but brutal. Voss is the seller, the student is the buyer. The item is a car. The student has a budget, Voss has a minimum price. In a traditional view, this is a math problem. They should find the zone of possible agreement, or ZOPA, and meet in the middle. But Voss doesn't play by those rules. He doesn't offer a price, he doesn't respond to logic. Instead, he uses a technique that seems almost passive. He stares at the student, he smiles, and he says things like, "It seems like you're really under a lot of pressure here," or "It sounds like you have a very specific budget in mind." The student gets flustered. He tries to argue the value of the car. Voss just mirrors him. The student tries to split the difference. Voss refuses to budge, but he does it so politely, so empathetically, that the student ends up bidding against himself.
The FBI agent walks away with a maximum price, and the Harvard student is left wondering what just happened. This moment illustrates the core tension of this book. For decades, the academic world treated negotiation as a rational problem to be solved. They believed that if two people could just set aside their emotions and look at the facts, they could reach a mutually beneficial agreement. They called this getting to yes. It focused on separating the people from the problem. But in the real world, the world of terrorists, bank robbers, and desperate kidnappers, you cannot separate the person from the problem. The person is the problem. Their emotions are the problem. Chris Voss spent 24 years in the FBI, culminating in his role as the lead international kidnapping negotiator. He realized early on that the classical theories failed when a guy was holding a gun to a hostage's head. You cannot tell a bank robber, "Let's look at this rationally," or "Let's split the difference." If you split the difference in a hostage negotiation, you save half the hostages and the other half die. That is not a win-win. That is a tragedy. This book is the documentation of a revolution in negotiation strategy. It moves away from the assumption that humans are rational actors. Instead, it embraces a messier, more accurate truth. Humans are irrational, emotional, and driven by ancient biological needs for safety and control. To understand why this shift occurred, we have to look at the history of the FBI's Crisis Negotiation Unit. In the 1970s, hostage negotiation was barely a field. The standard police response to a siege was usually surround the building and wait them out, or gas them and go in shooting. But after the tragic events at the Munich Olympics in 1972 and the Attica prison riots, law enforcement realized they needed a better way. They needed to talk. Initially, they tried to use psychology, but it was rudimentary.
Then, in the 80s, they adopted the Harvard Project on Negotiation Methods, the principled bargaining we just discussed. They tried to be problem solvers. They tried to find the common interests between the police and the bad guy. But it didn't work. The breakthrough came when they stopped trying to override the kidnapper's emotions and started using them. They realized that the most powerful tool in any verbal interaction is not logic, it is empathy. But this is not the soft, fuzzy empathy of sympathy or agreement. This is tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is the ability to recognize the perspective of a counterpart and the vocalization of that recognition. It is emotional intelligence on steroids. It is about listening so intensely that you can hear the emotions behind the words. It is about making the other person feel understood. Because when a person feels understood, something chemical happens in their brain. They relax. The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and threat, slows down. And when the fear center slows down, the rational part of the brain can finally turn on. This brings us to the science that underpins Voss's approach. He cites the work of Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economists. They introduced the world to the concepts of System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 is our fast, instinctive, and emotional brain. It is the animal mind. It reacts immediately to threats. It is irrational. System 2 is our slow, deliberative, and logical brain. It does the math. It weighs the pros and cons. The mistake most negotiators make, whether they are discussing a merger or arguing with their spouse, is assuming they are talking to System 2. They present logical arguments expecting a logical response. But negotiation is almost always a System 1 event. People are emotional first. They decide what they want based on feeling, and then they use System 2 logic to justify that decision later.
If you try to use logic on a person who is in the grip of System 1 emotion, you will fail. You are speaking a language they cannot hear. To succeed, you must first soothe the animal. You must quiet System 1 so that System 2 can come to the table. This is why the techniques in this book, mirroring, labeling, calibrated questions, are designed to address the emotional state of the counterpart first. This audio masterclass will guide you through the 10 chapters of the book, which are structured to follow the flow of a negotiation. We will start with the foundational techniques of active listening. We will learn how to be a mirror, reflecting the other person's words back to them to encourage them to talk. We will move to labeling, a way of verbally identifying the other person's feelings to diffuse negatives and reinforce positives. We will discuss the danger of the word yes and the immense hidden power of the word no. We will learn about the 2 words that transform any negotiation, words that signal the counterpart feels completely understood. We will explore how to bend reality, framing offers in a way that changes the other person's perception of value. We will learn to create the illusion of control, using calibrated questions to guide the counterpart toward your solution while letting them think it was their idea. We will cover how to guarantee execution, ensuring that the deal you make is the deal that actually happens, and how to spot liars in the process. Finally, we will learn how to bargain hard and how to find the black swan, the piece of hidden information that can change everything. Voss insists that life is a series of negotiations. You are negotiating when you ask your boss for a raise. You are negotiating when you try to get your kids to go to bed. You are negotiating when you buy a house. The principles that work for saving a hostage from a bank robber are the same principles that work for getting a better price on a car.
Negotiation is not a battle. It is a process of discovery. The goal is not to defeat the other side. The goal is to uncover what they really want and give it to them in a way that gets you what you want. It requires you to overcome your own fear of conflict. It requires you to navigate the rough waters of human emotion. So, forget what you have learned about compromise. Meeting in the middle is often a lazy way of failing. We are not here to split the difference. We are here to get the best possible outcome for us and for our counterpart by understanding the psychology of influence. Prepare yourself. We are about to enter the world of high-stakes negotiation. Chapter 1. The New Rules. How to become the smartest person in the room. We must pause and rewind slightly, for to understand the tools of mirroring and labeling, we must first understand the philosophical bedrock they rest upon. We missed a critical step in our journey, the moment the rules changed. This chapter is that moment. It is the bridge between the old world of rational bargaining and the new world of psychological influence. For decades, the FBI, like the business world, operated on a flawed assumption. They believed that if you were smart enough, logical enough, and had enough leverage, you could win. They followed the academic model known as getting to yes, popularized by Roger Fisher and William Ury at Harvard. This model assumes that people are rational actors. It assumes that if you can just expand the pie and separate the people from the problem, a solution will present itself. But in the field, this model collapsed. Chris Voss details the history of this collapse. In the 1970s, the FBI's negotiation training was virtually non-existent. By the 1980s, they were using the Harvard method. They were trying to problem solve with people who were irrational, high on drugs, or terrified. The turning point came with the realization that the rational actor is a myth. We like to think we are rational beings who occasionally have emotions. The truth, confirmed by neuroscientists and psychologists, is that we are emotional beings who occasionally use logic. This brings us to the core scientific concept of this chapter,
System 1 and System 2 thinking. As we briefly touched upon in the introduction, these terms come from the psychologist Daniel Kahneman. System 1 is our fast, instinctive, and emotional mind. It is automatic. It is the part of you that snaps at your spouse when you are hungry. It is the part of you that hits the brakes when a car cuts you off. It recognizes patterns and reacts. System 2 is our slow, deliberative, and logical.
It is the part of you that solves a math problem or fills out a tax form. It takes effort. It is lazy. Here is the critical insight. In a negotiation, System 1 is in charge. It is the driver. System 2 is just the passenger, and often it is asleep in the back seat. The old rules of negotiation try to talk to the passenger. The new rules talk to the driver. If you try to use logic and reason, System 2 tools, on a person who is in a System 1 state of fear or anger, you will fail. You are literally speaking a language their brain cannot process in that moment. You must first calm the beast. You must soothe System 1. This chapter forces us to confront our own cognitive biases. We are all victims of them, and so are our counterparts. To be the smartest person in the room, you do not need the highest IQ. You need the highest emotional intelligence, EQ. You need to understand how these biases warp reality. Let's look at the framing effect. People respond differently to the same choice depending on how it is framed. If you tell someone they have a 90% chance of survival, they feel safe. If you tell them they have a 10% chance of death, they feel terrified. The facts are the same. The reaction is opposite. A great negotiator knows how to frame a proposal to trigger the right emotional response. Consider prospect theory. This is the idea that we feel the pain of a loss much more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $5 feels twice as bad as finding $5 feels good. In negotiation, this means people will take terrible risks to avoid a loss. If you can frame your offer so that the other person feels they are avoiding a loss rather than gaining something, you have a massive advantage. Then there is the concept of discovery. The old school teaches that negotiation is a battle of arguments. I state my case, you state yours. We battle until one wins. The new school teaches that negotiation is a process of discovery. Your goal is to uncover as much information as possible. You are not there to be right, you are there to learn. Voss emphasizes that you must enter every interaction with a specific mindset, the hypothesis. You should have a hypothesis about what the other person wants, but you must be ready to throw it out the window the moment you hear something new. Most people go into a negotiation listening only for the things that confirm what they already believe. This is confirmation bias. It is deadly. To overcome this, you must stop listening to the voice in your own head. We all have it. We are usually so busy rehearsing our next argument that we don't hear what the other person is saying. Voss calls this schizophrenia. There are too many voices in your head. You need to quiet them. You need to focus 100% of your attention on the other person. This brings us to the 7-38-55 rule, created by Albert Mehrabian. In face-to-face communication, 7% of the message is conveyed through words, 38% is conveyed through tone of voice, 55% is conveyed through body language. Think about that. If you are focusing only on the words, the contract terms, the price, the specific demands, you are missing 93% of the data. The smartest person in the room is the one paying attention to the tone and the body language. When the words say yes, but the tone says I'm hesitant, the smartest person knows the answer is actually no. So, how do you apply the new rules? First, abandon the idea of being rational. Accept the messiness of emotion. Second, stop trying to force your solution. Start trying to understand their problem. Third, pay attention to the subtext, the tone, the hesitation, the silence. Fourth, and most importantly, slow down. Speed is the enemy of good negotiation. When we rush, we make mistakes. We let System 1 take over. By slowing down, you force the other person to slow down too. You move them from their emotional brain to their thinking brain. Chapter 1 is the wake-up call. It tells us that everything we thought about being professional was wrong. Being professional doesn't mean being a robot. It means being a master of human nature. It means understanding that the person across the table is scared, irrational, and driven by needs they might not even understand themselves. Your job is to be the psychological anchor in that storm.
Now that we have established the foundation of the new rules and the primacy of emotion over logic, we can see why mirroring, Chapter 2, and labeling, Chapter 3, are so effective. They are the tools designed specifically to soothe System 1. We are now ready to move forward to the next pivotal concept, the misunderstanding of the word yes and the power of no. Chapter 2. Be a mirror. How to establish rapport without even trying. We have established that listening is the most powerful tool in your arsenal. Now, we must learn the specific mechanics of how to listen in a way that builds immediate trust. Chapter 2 introduces a technique that is deceptively simple yet devastatingly effective: mirroring. Imagine you are walking down the street and you see a couple sitting on a park bench. They are deep in conversation. If they are connecting well, you will notice something fascinating about their body language. They will be synchronized. If one leans forward, the other leans forward. If one crosses their legs, the other crosses their legs. They are nodding in unison. This is a biological phenomenon called isopraxism. It's our natural, primal way of saying, I am like you. You are safe with me. We fear what is different. We are drawn to what is similar. In negotiation, we want to manufacture this feeling of similarity. But we aren't just going to copy their body language, though that helps. We are going to copy their speech.
This is what Chris Voss calls mirroring. In the FBI, a mirror is not just repeating everything the other person says like a parrot. That would be annoying. A mirror, in this specific tactical sense, is repeating the last 3 words, or the most critical 1 to 3 words, of what someone has just said. Why does this work? When you repeat someone's words back to them, it acts as a connector. It forces the other person to stop and reprocess what they just said. It signals to their brain, I heard you, but I need a little more clarity. Please go on. It triggers a natural instinct in the counterpart to elaborate. They will instinctively rephrase their point, expand on it, and often reveal more information than they intended. It sustains the connection without you having to come up with a brilliant question. Let's look at an example. Suppose you are negotiating a salary. The boss says, we just don't have the budget to give you a raise right now. You might be tempted to say, but I worked really hard, or that's not fair. Instead, you mirror. You say gently and inquisitively, the budget? The boss will likely respond, yes, the budget is tight because we're acquiring a new company. You mirror again, acquiring a new company? The boss, yeah, it's a huge deal in Ohio. It's draining all our cash reserves for the next quarter. Suddenly, you have uncovered a massive piece of information. The no wasn't about your performance. It was about a temporary cash flow issue due to an acquisition. Now you know that maybe you can ask for the raise to kick in next quarter, or ask for stock options instead of cash. The mirror gave you that opening. But mirroring isn't just about the words. It is heavily dependent on delivery. If you say, the budget, with a sneer or an aggressive tone, it's not a mirror, it's a challenge. This brings us to the importance of your voice. Voss identifies 3 main tones of voice available to a negotiator. The late-night FM DJ voice. This is the gold standard. It is deep, soft, slow, and calming. It is downward inflecting. It says, I am in control. Everything is okay. When you use this voice, you trigger a neurochemical reaction in the other person's brain that calms them down. You should use this voice most of the time. The positive, playful voice. This is the voice of an easygoing, good-natured person. You smile while you talk. When you smile, even over the phone, it changes the tonal quality of your voice. It makes you sound friendly and collaborative. This is your default voice for general interaction. The direct or assertive voice. This is hard, driving, and commanding. It signals dominance. Voss warns against using this voice. It usually causes pushback and triggers the other person's System 1 defense mechanisms. Use it rarely, if ever. So the technique is, use the late-night FM DJ voice and then mirror. Let's analyze a real-life FBI example from the book. Voss discusses a bank siege where the robber is paranoid. He's shouting, they're watching me. I know they're watching me. Voss, on the phone, uses the DJ voice. He doesn't argue. He mirrors. Voss, they're watching you? Robber, yeah, the guys in the van. I saw them. Voss, the guys in the van? Yeah, out back, by the alley. By simply repeating the last few words, Voss keeps the robber talking. He keeps him explaining. This does 2 things. It buys time, which is crucial in a crisis, and it gives the FBI intelligence on what the robber is seeing and thinking.
It also makes the robber feel heard, which lowers his aggression. Now, you might be thinking, this feels awkward. Won't they notice I'm just repeating them? Surprisingly, no. When done with the right tone, that inquisitive, help me understand tone, it is invisible. It feels like a natural conversation.
The other person just feels like you are paying very close attention. There is a specific process Voss recommends for navigating a confrontation using these tools. He calls it the process of disagreement. Use the late-night FM DJ voice. Calm them down. Start with, "I'm sorry." This is a small display of humility that disarms people. Mirror. Repeat their last few words. Silence. This is the hardest part. You must wait. Give the mirror at least 4 seconds to work. Let the silence hang. They will fill it. Repeat. Let's try this in a business context. A client screams, "This deliverable is garbage. I'm not paying for this." You, DJ voice. "I'm sorry." Garbage? Silence. Client. "Well, not garbage, but it's missing the key data from the Q3 report." You, DJ voice. "The Q3 report?" "Yes, the sales figures for the Northeast region. I need those to show my boss." The anger has dissipated. You have moved from a fight, "It's garbage," to a specific problem, "I need Northeast sales figures." You did it without arguing, defending, or explaining. You did it just by mirroring. The beauty of the mirror is that it puts the onus on the other person. They have to do the work of explaining. They have to do the work of rewording. And often, in that rewording, they will soften their stance. A hard no becomes a, "well, maybe if." So your homework from Chapter 2 is to practice mirroring in low-stakes situations. Try it with a waiter. Try it with a friend. When they say, "I had a crazy day," just say, "A crazy day?" and watch them open up. It is the quickest way to establish rapport without even trying. You are signaling empathy, you are gathering information, and you are making the other person feel like the most interesting person in the world.
Chapter 3. Don't feel their pain. Label it. How to create trust with tactical empathy. We have learned to slow down. We have learned to mirror. Now we must learn to navigate the storm of human emotion directly. In the old school of negotiation, emotions were seen as obstacles, things to be ignored or overcome. In this masterclass, emotions are not the obstacle. They are the means. Chapter 3 introduces the concept of tactical empathy. This is the bedrock of Chris Voss's entire philosophy. But let's be very clear about what empathy is not. It is not sympathy. It is not agreeing with the other person. It is not feeling sorry for them. You can have tactical empathy for a terrorist who you intend to put in prison. You can have tactical empathy for a boss who is firing you. Tactical empathy is purely an intellectual exercise. It is the ability to recognize the perspective of a counterpart and the vocalization of that recognition. It is understanding their worldview so completely that you can articulate it better than they can. Why is this necessary? Because in any conflict, there are invisible walls standing between you and a deal. These walls are made of negative emotions: fear, suspicion, anger, and distrust. You cannot hammer through these walls with logic. You must dismantle them brick by brick. The tool we use for this is called a label. Labeling is a way of validating someone's emotion by acknowledging it. It is giving a name to the feeling. Think of it like a distinct tag you place on an emotion you observe. The neuroscience behind this is profound. There is a brain experiment Voss cites involving the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. When people are shown a picture of an angry face, their amygdala lights up. They feel a threat. But if they are asked to label the emotion, to say, "This is anger," the activity in the amygdala diminishes. The activity moves to the rational part of the brain.
This leads to a fundamental rule of this book. Labeling a negative emotion disrupts it. Labeling a positive emotion reinforces it. If someone is angry at you and you say, "It seems like you are really frustrated with how this project is going," you are not making them more angry. You are draining the anger. You are showing them that you see them. But how do you construct a label? There are strict rules. A label almost always begins with one of 3 phrases. It seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. Notice what is missing, the word I. You must not say, I think you are angry, or I hear what you are saying. Why? Because when you use the word I, you make it about yourself. You signal that you are separate from them. It puts up a wall. It sounds like a judgment. But when you say, it sounds like, you are treating the emotion as an objective thing in the room. It allows for a plausible deniability. If you are wrong, you can say, I didn't say that was a fact. I said it seemed like that. Let's walk through the mechanics. Step 1. You detect the other person's emotional state. Are they tense? Are they hesitant? Are they aggressive? Step 2. You draft a label in your head using the phrasings, it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. Step 3. You say the label. Step 4. You shut up. We are back to the power of silence. A label is a statement, not a question. You do not say, it seems like you're angry, right? That demands an answer. It feels like a test. Just say, it seems like you're angry, and let it hang there. The silence invites them to reveal the truth. Let's apply this to a specific high-pressure scenario from the book. Voss talks about the Ryan case. Ryan was an employee whose contract was expiring, and he wanted to stay with the company. But the company was silent. He was terrified he was going to be fired. Finally, the boss calls him in. The boss is cold. Ryan could have tried to sell himself. I've done a great job. Look at my numbers.
Instead, Ryan used a label. He looked at the boss and said, "It sounds like you are under a lot of pressure to cut costs." The boss blinked. The tension broke. He said, "Yes, corporate is killing us. We have to cut the budget by 20%. Ryan followed up with another label. "It seems like you're trying to figure out who is essential to the team." The boss opened up completely. He explained exactly what was happening. Because Ryan labeled the boss's pain, the pressure from corporate, the boss stopped seeing Ryan as a line item to be cut and started seeing him as an ally who understood the problem. Ryan kept his job. This brings us to the most advanced form of labeling, the accusation audit. This is a technique used to clear the path before you even start negotiating. If you know the other side has negative feelings about you, or if you are about to deliver bad news, do not wait for them to get angry. Preempt the anger. List every terrible thing they could possibly think about you, and say it out loud first. Voss gives a brilliant example of this. He was negotiating a contract for his consulting firm. He knew the other side was going to think he was expensive, arrogant, and difficult. So he started the meeting by saying, "By the time we get off this phone call, you are going to think I am a typical American shark. You're going to think I'm ignoring your needs, that I'm loud, and that I'm trying to bully you into a deal you don't want." What happens when you do this? The other side immediately jumps to your defense. They say, "No, we don't think that." You have stolen their thunder. You have taken the sting out of their accusations by speaking them first. This is the accusation audit. It anchors their emotions. If you tell someone, "I'm going to be terrible," and then you are just merely difficult, they are relieved. This chapter teaches us that people want to be understood and accepted. It is a primal need. When you label their fears, you dissolve them.
When you label their goals, you solidify them. There is a distinct difference between "am I making sense?" and "does that make sense?" Never ask, "does that make sense?" It sounds condescending. It implies that if they don't understand, it's their fault. Instead, ask, "am I making sense?" This is humility. It invites them to help you. To summarize the strategy of Chapter 3, focus entirely on the other person. Identify their emotional state. Label it using "it seems," "it sounds," "it looks." Do not use "I." Use the accusation audit to diffuse negatives up front. And always follow your label with silence. You are now not just listening. You are reading the emotional code of the interaction. You are building a bridge of trust that will allow you to walk them exactly where you want them to go. Chapter 4. Beware Yes, Master No. How to generate momentum and reveal the real stakes. We have arrived at one of the most counterintuitive and transformative chapters in this entire philosophy. If you remember nothing else from this masterclass, remember this. Yes is the enemy. No is gold. In the traditional world of sales and negotiation, yes is the holy grail. We are taught to get the other person to say yes as quickly as possible. We are taught the yes momentum or the yes ladder. The theory goes that if you can get someone to agree to small things, do you like clean water? Do you want your family to be safe? They will eventually be trapped into saying yes to the big thing. Do you want to buy this water filter? Chris Voss argues that this is fundamentally wrong.
It is manipulative, and people know it. When someone tries to trap us with a yes ladder, our defenses go up. We feel cornered. We might say yes just to get them to shut up, with no intention of following through. Voss identifies 3 kinds of yes. First, the counterfeit yes. This is when someone says yes just to escape the conversation. They have no intention of doing what they said.
It is a lie used for survival. Second, the confirmation yes. This is a reflexive response. It's like saying, uh-huh, or right. It indicates they heard you, but it promises no action. Third, the commitment yes. This is the real deal. It is a solemn promise to act. The problem is, you cannot tell which yes you are getting until it is too late. By chasing yes, you are often chasing a mirage. Now consider the word no. We are conditioned to fear the word no. We think it means rejection. We think it means the deal is dead. But in the Voss model, no is not the end of the negotiation. No is the start of the negotiation. When a person says no, they feel a surge of autonomy. They feel safe. They feel in control. By saying no, they have defined their boundaries. They have protected themselves. And because they feel safe, they are actually more willing to listen. Think about the last time a telemarketer called you. They asked, "Is this a good time to talk?" Your immediate reaction was to tense up. If you say yes, you are trapped. But what if they asked, "Is now a bad time to talk?" If you say, "No, it's not a bad time," you haven't surrendered anything. You haven't promised anything. You have simply stated a fact. You feel safe. This is the psychological superpower of no. It preserves the counterpart's autonomy. Voss gives a powerful example involving a fundraising call. He was asked to donate to a political cause. The caller used the yes trap. Do you want to see better education? Do you believe in freedom? Voss felt annoyed. He gave a counterfeit yes just to get off the phone. But if the caller had flipped the script and asked questions designed to trigger a no, the outcome might have been different. Questions like, are you against improving education? Do you want our political rivals to win? These questions force you to say no, and in saying no, you implicitly agree with their stance, but without feeling coerced. So how do we apply this? We must rephrase our questions. We must stop asking for yes and start inviting no. Instead of asking, do you have a few minutes to talk? Ask, is now a bad time to talk? Instead of asking, do you agree with this idea? Ask, do you disagree? Instead of asking, is this a good idea? Ask, is this a ridiculous idea? Notice the shift. When you ask, is this a ridiculous idea, you are inviting them to criticize you. You are giving them permission to say no. They will likely say, no, it's not ridiculous, but here is my concern. And just like that, you are discussing the real issues. You have bypassed the defensive barriers. There is one specific tool in this chapter that is legendary among Voss's students. It is the magic email. We have all been there. You are emailing a client or a colleague. You are trying to get a deal done or get approval on a project. You send one email, no response. You send a polite follow-up, just checking in, no response. You start to panic. You want to send a third email pleading for a yes. Don't do it. Instead, send a one-line email designed to provoke a no. The subject line should be, have you given up on this project? That's it. Have you given up on this project? Why does this work? Because it hits the human fear of loss. It triggers the concept of loss aversion we discussed earlier. No one wants to be the person who gave up. No one wants to lose the opportunity. Furthermore, answering no is easy. It requires no commitment. They can just type, no, I haven't given up. We've just been busy. I'll call you Tuesday. Voss claims this email has a near 100% success rate in restarting stalled negotiations. It cuts through the silence like a knife because it threatens the end of the relationship in a polite way. This chapter also teaches us to handle the no when it comes at us. When someone tells you no, do not hear, I will never do this. Hear it as, I am not ready yet. I don't understand. I don't think I can afford it. I need more information. No is just a flag that says, stop. I need to feel safe again. When you hear no, pause. Use a label. It seems like that doesn't work for you. It seems like you have a reason for saying that. Then let them explain. In their explanation, you will find the path to the real deal. We must also discuss the danger of maybe. Maybe is usually a polite no or a counterfeit yes. It is worthless. If you get a maybe, you must pin it down. You can do this by going back to the no strategy. Is it a terrible idea to just say no to this right now? This gives them permission to reject you, which paradoxically often leads them to tell you exactly what needs to change to turn it into a yes. To summarize Chapter 4, Stop looking for yes. Yes is a trap. Start looking for no. No is safety. No is protection. Rephrase your questions to allow the other person to say no. Is now a bad time? Have you given up on this project? Are you against this? By giving the other person the power to say no, you are actually gaining the power to guide the conversation. You are removing the pressure, and when the pressure is gone, the negotiation can truly begin.
Chapter 5. Trigger the 2 words that immediately transform any negotiation. How to gain the permission to persuade. We have learned how to listen. We have learned how to label. We have learned to embrace the word no. Now we are looking for a specific signal that tells us we have successfully broken through the barrier. We are looking for the 2 sweetest words in any negotiation. Those words are not yes. They are not I agree. They are that's right. You must understand the profound difference between that's right and you're right. They sound similar, but in the language of negotiation, they are opposites. When someone says you're right, they are usually trying to get you to stop talking. They are politely dismissing you. Think about an argument with a spouse or a colleague. You make a point and they say, you're right, you're right. Do they really agree? No. They just want the conflict to end. They are preserving the relationship, but they have not changed their mind. Your right is a counterfeit agreement. It is a brick wall. But when someone says, that's right, a chemical shift has occurred in their brain. That's right is what people say when they feel completely understood. It is what they say when they hear their own thoughts coming out of your mouth, but clearer and more organized. When a person says, that's right, they are looking at you and seeing a mirror of their own reality. At that moment, the boundary between you and them dissolves. They stop seeing you as an opponent and start seeing you as a trusted partner. This is the epiphany. So how do we trigger this epiphany? We do it by constructing a summary. A summary is a specific combination of the tools we have already learned. It is the gold standard of active listening. The formula is rearticulation plus emotion equals summary. First, you must listen to their story. You must listen to their grievances, their demands, and their worldview. Then you rearticulate their story back to them.
You do not just repeat it, you organize it. You strip away the noise and present their case better than they could have presented it themselves. Then you label the underlying emotions attached to that story. It seems like you feel. It sounds like you are worried about. When you put these 2 things together, the facts of their situation and the feelings behind them, you create a summary. You deliver this summary to them and then you pause. If you have done it correctly, the only possible response they can give is, that's right. Let us look at a powerful example from the book involving a kidnapping in the Philippines. The terrorist group Abu Sayyaf had kidnapped Jeffrey Schroeder. Chris Voss was coaching the negotiator on the phone. The terrorists were demanding $10 million. The family had practically nothing. The terrorist leader, a man named Benji, was angry. He was shouting about war, about history, about injustices against his people over hundreds of years. A traditional negotiator would have said, let's focus on the present, or that is not relevant to this deal. Voss told the negotiator to do the opposite. He said, listen to him, let him talk, and then summarize his grievance. The negotiator got on the phone and said, effectively, it sounds like you and your people have been persecuted for generations. It sounds like the government has broken every promise they ever made to you. It seems like you are fighting a war to restore the dignity of your ancestors, and you feel completely abandoned by the world. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, Benji said, that's right. In that moment, the dynamic changed. Benji no longer saw the negotiator as just another enemy. He saw him as someone who understood the cause. The ransom demand dropped, the aggression dissipated. By acknowledging the terrorist's reality, the negotiator earned the right to negotiate. This works in business just as well as it works with terrorists. Imagine you are selling a product and the client is hesitating. They have given you a laundry list of complaints about their current supplier and their fears about switching. Do not counter their complaints. Summarize them. Say to them, so the way you see it is that your current supplier has missed 3 deadlines in a row, which cost you $10,000. You are terrified that if you switch to us, you will face a difficult onboarding process that will slow you down even more. You need a guarantee that this transition will be seamless, or else your boss is going to have your head.
If you get it right, they will look at you, maybe exhale a breath they didn't know they were holding, and say, "That's right." Once they say those words, they have given you permission to persuade. They have emptied their buffer. Now, and only now, can you begin to offer your solution. This chapter forces us to suppress our own ego. We all want to be told, "You're right." We want the validation of being smart. But in negotiation, your goal is not to be right. Your goal is to get it right. If you say something and they say, "You're right," you have failed. You have likely pushed too hard. If you say something and they say, "That's right," you have won. The "that's right" strategy is also the ultimate tool for handling the invisible partner, the boss or the committee behind the person you are talking to. Often, the person at the table is not the decision maker. If you can help them summarize the situation perfectly, they will carry that summary back to their boss. You are arming them with the script they need to sell your deal internally. So, your objective for Chapter 5 is to practice the summary. Don't just mirror, don't just label, combine them. Listen until you have the whole picture. Repeat it back to them fully. Include the emotions, and wait for the magic words. That's right.
Chapter 6. Bend Their Reality. How to Shape What is Fair. We have now entered the realm of advanced psychology. Up until this point, we have focused on communication techniques, how to listen, how to mirror, how to summarize. Now, we are going to talk about leverage. We are going to talk about how to manipulate the very fabric of the situation to make your offer look better than it actually is. We are going to talk about reality. Reality is not a fixed object. It is subjective. And because it is subjective, it can be bent. The most powerful tool for bending reality is a single four-letter word. It is the F word of negotiation. Fair. In all his years with the FBI, Chris Voss learned that fairness is the single most emotional term in a negotiation. It is a word that bypasses logic and strikes directly at our sense of social standing and survival. If you feel you are being treated unfairly, you will burn the deal to the ground just to punish the other person. You will act against your own economic interests just to restore your dignity. Voss identifies 3 specific ways the word fair is used, and you must learn to recognize them immediately. The first way is the most common and the most manipulative. It is what Voss calls the judo punch. The counterpart says, "I just want what is fair." This is a trap. When someone says this, they are implicitly accusing you of being unfair. It puts you on the defensive. It makes you worry that you are being greedy. To prove that you are a good person, you start conceding. You bid against yourself. If someone says to you, "I just want what is fair," do not fall for it. Instead, pause, take a deep breath, and say, "I am sorry. Let's stop everything. Please, tell me where I started treating you unfairly and we will fix it." By doing this, you call their bluff. You force them to point to a specific action. Usually, they can't. They were just using the word to squeeze you. The second use of the word is even more nefarious. It is the shutdown.
The counterpart says, "We have given you a fair offer. This is designed to stop you from asking for more." It claims the moral high ground. If you ask for more, you are being unreasonable. When you hear this, you must pivot. You must not let the word fair anchor you. You might say, "Fair is a loaded term. Let's look at the market data and see where we stand." The third use is the positive approach. This is the one you should use. Early in a negotiation, you should say, "I want you to feel like you are being treated fairly at all times. So please, if at any point I make a mistake or you feel like I am being unfair, stop me immediately and we will address it." This sets the stage for honesty. It makes you look like a protector of their well-being. It lowers their defenses. Once we understand the emotional power of fairness, we can move to the mechanics of bending reality using prospect theory. As we discussed in Chapter 1, people are motivated more by the fear of loss than the hope of gain. This means that if you frame your offer as a gain, it is weak. If you frame it as avoiding a loss, it is strong. Do not say, "If we make this deal, you will save 20%. Say, "If we do not make this deal, you will lose 20% of your budget every single day." The number is the same. The psychological impact is radically different. This brings us to the question of anchoring. Who should name the price first? The old school says, "Never go first." Voss agrees, but with a caveat. You should usually let the other side go first, because you might be wrong about the value. If you are selling a car and you ask for $5,000, but the buyer was willing to pay $7,000, you have just lost $2,000 by going first. This is the winner's curse. However, if you are dealing with a professional shark,
You might need to anchor them to bend their reality. If you must go first or if you must counter an offer, use a range, but not just any range.
Use a bolstering range. Let's say you are negotiating a salary. You want $150,000. If you say, I want between 130 and 150, you are going to get 130. System 1 thinking immediately grabs the lowest number. Instead, use the bolstering range. Look at comparable high-end salaries and say, positions like this one typically pay between $150,000 and $180,000. Now, 150 is your floor. You have anchored their expectation high. Even if they talk you down to 150, you have won. And because the range is based on market data, you sound reasonable, not greedy. Another critical tool for bending reality is the use of specific odd numbers. This sounds like a magic trick, but it is pure psychology. If you ask for $100,000, it sounds like a placeholder. It sounds like you licked your finger and stuck it in the wind. It invites negotiation. But if you ask for $102,327, that number looks calculated. It looks like the result of a serious mathematical formula. It tells the other side, I have done my homework. There is no wiggle room here. In the book, Voss talks about kidnappers. When a kidnapper asks for $1 million, Voss knows they are just starting. But when they ask for exactly $213,000, Voss knows they have a specific debt to pay, and they are getting serious. Use odd numbers to signal weight and immovability. Finally, we must discuss the power of non-monetary terms. Sometimes the other side truly does not have the money. You cannot squeeze blood from a stone. But that does not mean the deal is dead. It means you have to bend reality by changing the currency. What matters to them that costs you nothing? What matters to you that costs them nothing?
Voss calls this finding things that are low cost to the giver but high value to the receiver. If you are negotiating a salary and they cannot meet your number, can they give you an extra week of vacation? Can they give you a better title? Can they let you work from home? If you are a lawyer, can they put your name on the firm's website? These things have zero cash cost, but high emotional or professional value. By pivoting to non-monetary terms, you make the deal fair without breaking their budget. One final tactic from this chapter, the surprise gift. This is a way to trigger reciprocity. If you are in a deadlock, try giving a sudden, unexpected, and unconditional gift. It doesn't have to be expensive. It could be a piece of information. It could be a small concession. When you give someone a gift, a primitive part of their brain feels indebted to you. They feel a biological urge to give something back. Voss tells a story of a negotiation for a hostage where he conceded a small point unexpectedly. The kidnapper was so thrown off by the gesture of goodwill that he became much more cooperative in the next phase. To summarize Chapter 6, you are not just a negotiator. You are an architect of reality. Diffuse the word fair. Do not let it trap you. Use it to build trust. Frame everything in terms of what they will lose, not what they will gain. Let them go first on price if you can. If you must go first, use a bolstering range to set a high anchor. Use specific odd numbers to sound immovable. And if the money isn't there, look for the hidden value in non-monetary terms. You are now shaping the landscape on which the negotiation takes place. You have defined what is fair. Now you must learn how to lead them to the solution without them realizing you are leading them. Chapter 7. Create the illusion of control. How to calibrate questions to transform conflict into collaboration. We have now reached the pivot point of the negotiation.
Up until now, we have been gathering information, building rapport, and shaping reality. Now, we must move the counterpart toward a solution. But here lies the paradox. If you try to push them toward a solution, they will resist. Humans hate being told what to do. We cherish our autonomy. So, how do you lead a horse to water and make it drink? You don't. You make the horse thirsty. You create a situation where the other person asks you for the solution you wanted all along. You give them the illusion of control. The tool for this is the calibrated question. In the traditional getting to yes model, negotiators are taught to ask closed-ended questions to confirm facts. Is the price $10? Can you deliver by Friday? Voss argues that these questions are weak because they are easy to dodge with a simple no or a counterfeit yes. Instead, we use open-ended questions, but not just any open-ended questions, specifically designed calibrated questions that remove the aggression from the conversation. The most powerful words in a negotiator's vocabulary are how and what. Avoid why. Why is an accusatory word. When you ask someone, why did you do that? It translates in their brain to, what is wrong with you? It puts them on the defensive.
They have to justify themselves. The only time you use why is when you want to knock them off balance, or if you are trying to get them to defend your position, e.g., why would you ever choose us over the competition, which forces them to list your pros. Otherwise, stick to how and what. These words tap into the counterpart's System 2 thinking. They force the brain to stop, think, and look for an answer. They turn a confrontation into a consultation. Let's look at the ultimate calibrated question. It is the question Chris Voss calls his secret weapon. It is the question that saves marriages and closes multi-million-dollar deals. How am I supposed to do that? This question is genius in its simplicity.
Imagine a kidnapper demands $1 million immediately. You don't have it. If you say, "I can't pay that," you are saying no. You are resisting. The kidnapper gets angry. But if you say gently and deferentially, "How am I supposed to do that?" you are not saying no. You are asking for help. You are effectively dumping the problem back into their lap. You are saying, "I want to help you, but you have given me an impossible task. You solve it." The kidnapper now has to stop thinking about killing the hostage and start thinking about your financial logistics. They become your partner in solving the problem they created. They might say, "Well, sell your car." You mirror. "Sell my car?" They say, "Yeah," or borrow from a friend. You say, "How quickly can I get a loan from a friend on a Sunday?" Every time you ask how or what, you are wearing them down. You are forcing them to expend energy to solve your problems. Eventually, they will get tired. They will bid against themselves. They will say, "Okay, fine, just give us what you have." This is the essence of forced empathy. You are forcing them to look at the world through your eyes to answer the question. Here is a list of other powerful calibrated questions to keep in your arsenal. What about this is important to you? Used to uncover value. How can we solve this problem? Used to encourage collaboration. What are we trying to accomplish here? Used to reset the focus. How will we know when we're on track? Used to define success. Notice the tone. These must be delivered with the late-night FM DJ voice or a curious, apologetic tone. If you say, "How am I supposed to do that?" angrily, it's just a protest. It must be a genuine request for guidance. This chapter also introduces the concept of emotional regulation. When you are attacked in a negotiation, when someone screams at you or insults you, your natural instinct is to fight back, flight or fight. You must override this.
Voss uses the metaphor of a shark, the aggressor, and the diver. When a shark attacks, you don't punch it in the nose, usually. You don't swim away, you'll die. You stay calm, you let it pass. When someone attacks you verbally, do not respond to the content of the attack. Respond to the emotion or the logistics. It seems like you're upset. Label. How does shouting help us fix this delay? Calibrated question. By refusing to engage in the fight, you leave the aggressor punching empty air. They will exhaust themselves. Voss shares a story of a negotiation with a contractor at his house. The contractor was demanding more money for work that wasn't done. Voss didn't get angry. He just kept asking, "How am I supposed to pay you for work that isn't finished?" The contractor argued. Voss repeated the question. "I understand, but how am I supposed to pay for work that isn't finished?" He said it 3 or 4 times. Finally, the contractor realized there was no answer. He went back to work. There is no magic spell in negotiation, but "how am I supposed to do that" is as close as it comes. It is a no that sounds like a yes. It buys time, it gathers information, and it gives the other person the illusion that they are in control, right up until the moment they give you exactly what you want. So, your homework for Chapter 7? Stop asking why. Start asking how and what. Practice the phrase, "How am I supposed to do that?" And remember, the listener has the control. The talker is the one revealing information. Let them talk. Let them feel powerful. While they are busy feeling powerful, you will be busy winning.
Chapter 8. Guarantee Execution. How to spot the liars and ensure follow-through. We have now reached the danger zone. You have navigated the emotions, you have bent reality, and you have seemingly reached an agreement. They said yes, you shook hands. You think the deal is done. But in the world of high-stakes negotiation, yes is nothing without how. Chris Voss warns that the most dangerous moment in a negotiation is the moment after the agreement is made. This is because people are terrible at execution. They promise things they cannot deliver. They lie to get out of the room. They agree to terms that their boss will never approve. Chapter 8 is about ensuring that the deal you make is the deal that actually happens. It is about spotting the liars, the fakes, and the wishful thinkers before it is too late. The first principle of execution is asking, how will we know we are on track? Do not just accept the goal. Define the path. You must ask, how will we address things if we find we are off track? How does this affect the rest of your team? If they cannot answer these questions specifically, they do not have a deal. They have a fantasy. This brings us to the art of lie detection. Voss introduces a concept he calls the Pinocchio effect. In a study of communication, researchers found that when people lie, their language changes in predictable ways. First, they use more words. Liars try to work too hard to be believable. They add unnecessary details. They ramble. Second, they use more complex sentences. They speak in third-person pronouns. They distance themselves from the lie. Instead of saying, "I didn't do it," they say, "The situation that occurred was not one in which any misconduct took place." Honest people are concise. Liars are complicated. To separate the honest from the dishonest and the committed from the non-committed, Voss uses the rule of 3. It is very easy to fake agreement once. It is harder to fake it twice.
It is almost impossible to fake it 3 times in the same conversation. You want to get the counterpart to agree to the same thing 3 times. The first time, they agree to the proposal. Okay, we'll do it. The second time, you summarize or label their agreement to get a "that's right." So just to be clear, the plan is to deliver by Friday. That's right. The third time, you ask a how question about implementation. How will your logistics team handle that delivery by Friday? If they answer the how question with specifics, the deal is real. If they stumble or give a vague answer after agreeing twice, you have found a crack in the foundation. Next, we must look for the incongruence. We revisit the 7-38-55 rule. Remember, 7% words, 38% tone, 55% body language. When the words say yes, but the tone is hesitant, or the eyes are looking away, or the body is turned toward the door, believe the body. Voss calls this spotting the shark. When you see a mismatch between the words and the behavior, you must address it immediately. Do not ignore it hoping it will go away. Use a label. I heard you say yes, but it seemed like there was a hesitation in your voice. You must drag the hesitation into the light. If you don't, it will kill the deal later. Another critical indicator of execution is pronoun usage. This is one of the most counterintuitive insights in the book. Pay attention to whether they use the word I or we or they. The person who uses the word I all the time, "I will decide," "I can do this," "I am the boss," is usually the unimportant person. They are trying to look important. They are compensating for a lack of real authority. The person who uses we or they, "We need to look at this," "The committee might struggle with this," is usually the actual decision maker. They are smart enough to spread the responsibility. They are confident enough not to need to brag. If you are talking to the I guy, you are wasting your time. You need to find the we guy. Finally, Voss teaches us how to force our counterpart to bid against themselves using the Chris Voss no. This is a technique to use when you want to decline a bad offer, but you want to do it in a way that keeps the negotiation alive. You must say no without using the word no. You do this by combining the how question with a gentle tone. Your offer is very generous, but I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, but I just can't do that. How am I supposed to do that? Notice the repetition. You are not getting angry. You are just being an immovable object. If you deliver these soft no's correctly, the other person will often feel bad for you. They will feel like they are the ones failing to solve the problem, and to solve it, they will raise their offer. The goal of Chapter 8 is to close the gap between agreement and action. A signed contract is just a piece of paper. Execution is everything. By using the rule of 3, checking for the Pinocchio effect, and watching their pronouns, you can predict whether they will actually show up with the money. Don't be seduced by the yes. Be skeptical, be vigilant, and make them tell you how.
Chapter 9. Bargain Hard. How to Get Your Price. We have arrived at the moment most people dread. We have built rapport. We have labeled emotions. We have calibrated our questions. But eventually, in almost every negotiation, there comes a moment where you have to talk about numbers. You have to haggle. For many, this is the most uncomfortable part of the process. We view bargaining as conflict. We view it as tacky. We worry that if we push too hard, we will destroy the relationship we have just worked so hard to build. Chris Voss tells us to get over it. You are not being mean by bargaining, you are being professional. And more importantly, there is a way to bargain that does not destroy relationships. In fact, if done correctly, it can enhance them. To bargain effectively, you must first understand who you are dealing with. Voss identifies 3 distinct types of negotiators. Everyone you meet falls into one of these 3 categories. If you try to use the same strategy on all of them, you will fail. The first type is the analyst. The analyst is methodical, diligent, and hates surprises. They believe that as long as they are working on the problem, they are making progress. They love data. They love facts. They prepare for 2 weeks for a 10-minute meeting. To an analyst, silence is an opportunity to think. If you go silent, they will not get nervous. They will appreciate the time to process. However, analysts are hypersensitive to reciprocity. If they give you a concession, they expect one back immediately. If they don't get it, they will shut down. When dealing with an analyst, do not use the surprise gift technique early on. It will confuse them. Stick to the data. Use clear, logical labels, and do not rush them. If you rush an analyst, they will view you as incompetent. The second type is the accommodator. The accommodator is the most common type. They are relationship-focused. They love to talk. They want everyone to be happy. Their goal is to be liked.
To an accommodator, silence is torture. If you go silent, they interpret it as anger. They will start talking just to fill the void, often giving away information they shouldn't. The danger with the accommodator is the counterfeit yes. They will agree to anything just to keep the peace, but they often cannot deliver. You must be very careful to use the rule of 3 from Chapter 8 to ensure they are actually committed. When dealing with them, be friendly, smile, but do not let their friendliness distract you from the details. The third type is the assertive. The assertive believes that time is money. They are direct, aggressive, and focused on the bottom line. They love to win. To them, a negotiation is an intellectual spar. They want to be heard and they want to be respected. To an assertive, silence is a chance to talk more. They do not listen. They are just waiting for you to stop talking so they can speak again. The only way to get an assertive to listen is to mirror them and label them until they feel you have heard them. You have to say, "It sounds like you have a very strict deadline," or "It seems like you are frustrated by this price." Once they feel heard, they will pause. That is your opening. You must identify your own type, and you must identify your counterpart's type. This is the concept of know thyself, know thy enemy. If you are an accommodator negotiating with an assertive, you are going to get crushed unless you prepare. You need to armor yourself. Now that we know the players, let's talk about the system. Voss introduces the Ackerman model. This is a systematic, step-by-step process for bargaining. It is designed to maximize your return while minimizing the emotional blowback. It turns the haggling process into a mathematical formula. Here is how it works. Let's say you are the buyer. You have a target price in mind, the maximum you are willing to pay. Let's say your target is $100,000. Step 1, set your target price.
$100,000. Step 2, set your first offer at 65% of your target. In this case, $65,000. This is an extreme anchor. It will shock them, but because it is so low, it gives you plenty of room to move. When they reject it, and they will, you do not get angry. You use empathy. I know this is a low number, and I'm sorry, but that is where my budget is. Step 3, calculate your raises. The model dictates 3 raises. First raise to 85%, second raise to 95%, third raise to 100%. Notice the increments. The first jump is 20% from 65 to 85. The second jump is 10% from 85 to 95. The third jump is 5% from 95 to 100. Why do we do this? Because decreasing increments signal to the other person's brain that you are running out of money. If you go from 65 to 75 to 85, you are moving in steady $10,000 blocks. The other person thinks he has plenty more where that came from. But if you go big, then smaller, then tiny, you are subconsciously telling them, I am squeezing every last drop I have. Step 4, use know and empathy between every offer. Do not just shout out numbers. When they reject the $65,000, say, how am I supposed to go higher when my budget is fixed?
Calibrated question. Make them fight for the 85,000. Make them fight even harder for the 95,000. Step 5. The final offer must be a precise, non-round number. Do not offer $100,000. Offer $100,378. Why? Because round numbers feel like estimates. They feel like you are rounding down. A precise number like $100,378 looks like the result of a serious calculation. It looks like you emptied your bank account. It looks final. Voss calls this giving the number credibility and weight. Step 6. Throw in a non-monetary item on your final number.
When you hit your limit, say, this is literally every penny I have, $100,000, $378. But to show you I'm serious, I can also write a testimonial for your website, or I can pay the full amount up front today. This signals that you have hit a wall on cash and are now trying to bridge the gap with other value. Let's look at this in practice. You are buying a car. The dealer wants $20,000. You want to pay $15,000. You offer 65% of $15K, roughly $9,750. The dealer laughs. You use empathy. I'm sorry, that's all I have. You come up to 85%, $12,750. You say, I squeeze some more out. You come up to 95%, $14,250. You say, my wife is going to kill me, but this is it. You hit them with the final number, $15,123. That is the absolute limit. By the time you get to the end, the dealer feels like they have won. They feel like they dragged you up from $9,000. They feel like they took every penny you had, and you got the car for the price you wanted. This is the art of bargaining hard. It is not about being loud. It is not about being aggressive. It is about having a plan. Most people enter a negotiation with no plan. They just hope for the best. The Ackerman model gives you a map. It prevents you from panicking. It prevents you from bidding against yourself. One final note for this chapter. Be prepared to walk away. Voss reminds us, no deal is better than a bad deal. If you go through the Ackerman process, you use all your empathy, you bend reality, and they still won't meet your number, you must be willing to walk. But here's the secret. When you are truly willing to walk, the other side can smell it. And often, that is the moment they chase you. Chapter 9 transforms you from a gambler to an accountant. It takes the mystery out of the price. Prepare your numbers, know your type, trust the process.
Chapter 10. Find the Black Swan. How to reveal the unknown unknowns. We have arrived at the summit. We have mastered the techniques of listening, labeling, and bargaining. But there is one final level of negotiation mastery. It is the realm of the Black Swan. The term comes from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. For centuries, people in the old world believed that all swans were white. Every swan they had ever seen was white. It was an unshakable fact. Then explorers traveled to Australia and found black swans. In an instant, a universal truth was shattered. In negotiation, a black swan is a piece of hidden information that changes everything. It is an unknown unknown. To understand this, we must look at the three types of information in any interaction. First, there are known knowns. These are the things you know and the things you know the other side knows. The price, the product, the names. This is where most people prepare. Second, there are known unknowns. These are the things you know that you don't know. You don't know their budget. You don't know who the decision maker is. You can list these and ask questions to find the answers. Third, and most importantly, there are unknown unknowns. These are the things you don't even know exist. You don't know that the CEO is sick. You don't know that the company is being sued by the government. You don't know that the land you are buying is sitting on a toxic waste dump. Black swans live in the third category. They are the game changers. Chris Voss argues that in every single negotiation, there are at least 3 black swans. 3 pieces of information that, if discovered, would completely alter the balance of power. Your entire goal in the negotiation should be to find them. But you cannot find a black swan if you are blinded by what you think you know. You have to let go of your assumptions. You have to embrace the mindset that you know nothing. So, where do black swans hide?
They hide in the crazy. When the other side is acting irrational, crazy, or illogical, do not dismiss them. Crazy is a clue. It is a signal that there is a black swan you haven't found yet.
Voss identifies 3 reasons why people act crazy. They are ill-informed. They literally do not have the same facts you have. If you educate them, the crazy disappears. They are constrained. There is something preventing them from acting that they cannot tell you about. Maybe they have a boss who hates your company. Maybe they have a cash flow crisis. They have different interests. You are playing for money. They are playing for prestige. You are playing for speed. They are playing for safety. If you can figure out why they are acting crazy, you have found the black swan. This brings us to leverage. Finding a black swan gives you leverage. Leverage is the ability to inflict loss or withhold gain. There are 3 types of leverage you can use. Positive leverage, you have something they want. You have the car they need or the skill set they desire. This is the most common form. I can help you. Negative leverage, you have the ability to make them suffer. This is a threat. If you don't do this, I will ruin your reputation. Voss warns to use this sparingly. It destroys relationships, but you must be aware of it because they might use it on you. Normative leverage. This is the most subtle and powerful form. This is using the other person's moral code against them. Every person has a set of rules they live by. They might pride themselves on being fair or Christian or honorable. If you can find a discrepancy between their actions and their stated values, you have normative leverage. If a man says, "I am a man of my word," and then he tries to back out of a deal, you say, "It seems like you are struggling to keep your word here." You are not attacking him. You are holding a mirror up to his own standards.
He will move heaven and earth to fix the discrepancy to protect his identity. To find these leverage points, you need FaceTime. You cannot find black swans in an email. You cannot find them in a text. You need to see the flicker in their eyes. You need to hear the crack in their voice. Voss insists that you must get face-to-face, or at least voice-to-voice. You need to observe their unguarded moments, the beginning and end of meetings, the casual meals. That is when the mask slips. That is when the black swan appears. One of the most profound examples in the book involves a religious black swan. A negotiation was stalled. The other side was being stubborn for no apparent reason. Voss and his team dug deeper. They realized that the counterpart belonged to a specific religious group that viewed the negotiation as a test of faith. They weren't holding out for money. They were holding out for spiritual validation. Once Voss understood this, he stopped talking about dollars and started talking about stewardship and responsibility. The deal was unlocked instantly. The black swan was their worldview. So how do you catch a black swan? You listen for the things that don't make sense. You ask questions that probe their constraints. What happens if this doesn't get done? How does this affect the rest of your team? And you create safety. People only reveal their deepest secrets, their constraints, their fears, their hidden agendas, when they feel completely safe. When you find a black swan, do not gloat. Use it gently. It seems like this new information changes things. By integrating the black swan into the deal, you don't just win, you change the game entirely. Conclusion. We have traveled a long road together. We started in the lecture halls of Harvard, where negotiation was a math problem. We ended in the trenches of the FBI, where negotiation is a psychological struggle for survival. The core message of Never Split the Difference is that conflict is not something to be avoided. It is something to be navigated. Most of us walk through life terrified of no. We are terrified of confrontation. We compromise. We split the difference. We accept mediocrity because we are afraid to ask for what we want. Chris Voss teaches us that on the other side of that fear is everything you have ever wanted. The tools you have learned, mirroring, labeling, the accusation audit, the no, the summary, the calibrated question, the Ackerman model, these are not just tricks, they are mechanisms of human connection. They rely on a single fundamental truth. We all want to be understood. The most dangerous man in the room is not the one with the gun, it is the one who can listen. When you truly listen to someone, when you can summarize their pain, label their fears, and give them the illusion of control, you disarm them. You turn an enemy into a partner. So go out and negotiate. Negotiate the price of your coffee. Negotiate your rent. Negotiate your salary. Negotiate your teenager's curfew. Don't do it to win. Do it to practice. Do it to discover the black swans hiding in your everyday life. Remember, don't feel their pain, label it. Don't accept yes, master no. Don't force your way, ask how, and never, ever split the difference. Because in the end, negotiation is not about money, it is about life, and you should negotiate as if your life depended on it. This concludes the audio insights for Never Split the Difference.